All right. So now we're going to talk about something that is a little different way of looking at the issues. It includes a lot of technology discussion, but it's really a more kind of, it's about communications. What is media in this age, and how is media changing the way we think about healthcare? And we have three healthcare media practitioners of the highest order up here joining me. From my left and from your left, Steve Zatz, who's the CEO of WebMD, and he's a doctor. And next to him is Meredith Guerrero. Did I say that right?
Yeah.
Who is she runs Facebook's healthcare vertical.
Yep.
She also does other things, including running the politics and nonprofit vertical, which isn't entirely irrelevant, and we'll get to perhaps a little bit of that, because she's dealing with a lot of regulated industries, so to speak. And finally, Lynn Voss, who I really appreciate because she's been a kind of a advisor to us a little bit and helped inspire even this event, I would say, to some significant degree, and has her own event that's not that dissimilar, which is called what?
Stream Health.
Stream Health, a very cool event, which I admire. She is CEO of Gray Healthcare Group, Gray Health Group. Did he?
Cut the care off. We cut the care off.
Did you used to have care on there?
We did.
You did. Okay, that's why I'm confused. I've known you a long time. It's a part of WPP that is a
we're in health and wellness.
An ad agency that just does health-related stuff. Mm-hmm. So I want to start with you, Lynn, to just when you think about media in health, and you've been here all day, you've heard a lot of discussions. You know, how do we think about the relationship of how we get information to all these complicated issues we've been discussing today?
So I believe that the health media is really a major part of the healthcare ecosystem. And you know, Meredith's going to fill us in on all the data from Facebook and WebMD. There's just an enormous number of people that are online continually looking for information, sharing information with peers. And we haven't really maximized the opportunity with them there to turn those conversations into something more that would actually deliver higher outcomes. And I would just say that based on the conversation today, the thing that strikes me is, you know, we're spending so much time talking about sick care, so much time talking about how we're going to fix the healthcare system. And yet kind of like, you know, it's like Dorothy, click your heels. We have it in the health media. We have it in retail health. Consumers are, let's go where the consumers are and try to actually address their needs there. And, you know, the other thing that I think we could talk about a little later is there's a changing health customer out there. Millennials, Gen X, they want things differently. They're online, they're inquisitive, they demand evidence, and they really, we haven't at all talked about, nor do we ever even hear about this, quite frankly, at most health conferences, is the new health customer. What are they looking for, and how can we meet that?
So when you say we have it, what do you mean exactly that we have? You say, you say we have a new...
Well, the new, I mean, I think we've done, there's a lot of data. We've done several studies ourselves with Kantar, taking a deeper dive into the different generations on what they expect in healthcare, what they're looking for. And when you really, like, I'll just throw out for an example, millennials have no interest in having a primary care provider. Now, if that's the truth, and that's what they're saying, why are we spending so much time as we do talking about the doctor? Shouldn't we also be talking about where else they're going to get care, whether it's telemedicine or also just through peer influence? So those are just, that's just kind of a thought starter.
Well, maybe we'll get more such insights as from your research later. Let's jump over to Steve, if we could, because WebMD has been around for a long time, and you have a huge footprint in this space of healthcare information. So talk about where the company is today and what you think of as its primary mission.
Sure. Look, the healthcare system both is complicated today, and I think in the foreseeable future, it's going to remain complicated and confusing to consumers. And we've always seen at WebMD the opportunity to provide information and just help people navigate this, fragmented and complex healthcare world. People need information. Our whole mission has always been, though, to say at some point you're likely to interact with the healthcare system. Can we prepare you as well as possible for those interactions, which have gotten shorter and shorter, and where you're going to have to take more responsibility for managing your own healthcare? Sometimes that's directly. We obviously have a lot of caregivers who come to us as well. You know, when you ask where we're going, typically, though, when you've come to WebMD, you've gotten information, and then if you wanted to do something, you needed to go somewhere else. And we're certainly looking hard at the fact with all these digital options to actually kind of complete the transaction, if you will, whether it's a telemedicine visit, whether you want to order a lab test right there. We really see this opportunity to not only help people understand what's going on with their health, but really help them make a decision. And then when they make that decision, actually, to the extent it can be done digitally, and more can, actually have them kind of complete that and really get the information and get the care they need.
Just give us a little bit a sense of the scale of consumer interactions you have. How many people are looking at it? What are they doing?
So each month, about 74 million U.S. citizens come to us and are looking for healthcare information. It's by far the largest site and place that people go looking for healthcare information. I mean, to give you a sense of the scale, you know, in page views, it's 4 times larger than our nearest competitor, and we've been around for 20 years. So while I don't think we've perfected what we've done, we've tried to listen as closely as we can to what consumers are looking for. And look, it's a broad spectrum. Some of those people have multiple illnesses and are seriously ill, and some people just want to feel a little bit better. And we've tried to satisfy all those needs, but make sure that when you come to us, you can make a decision. I mean, the one thing I'd add is people tend not to surf healthcare. I mean, if you could watch, you know, Better Call Saul or think about your health care, most people would say, I'd prefer the entertainment. So they come to us generally for a reason. And it's usually that they want to make a decision. They have to figure out, do they need to see a doctor? Do they need to change their medication? Do they need to be on one? Is this child sick enough that I should take them to the doctor, or can I wait it out? So they have all these questions. So, you know, that's a pretty weighty responsibility, because we know people are trying to make a difficult decision in coming to us, and that's what we've tried to do. We've tried to meet that need.
And you also serve a community of doctors, too. Talk about that.
I'm happy to talk about that. So that 675,000 U.S. physicians, there are probably about 800,000 practicing, somewhere on the order of 75% of physicians use Medscape and are active on Medscape. And we are kind of in this unique position because we see consumers who are looking for information. We see doctors who are looking for information as well, and they're trying to satisfy all the needs of these consumers and patients who are coming into their offices.
And what are the doctors trying to accomplish on Medscape, typically?
Sure. A couple things. It is almost impossible, as you've probably heard earlier, to keep up with what's going on in medicine. So absolutely a piece of this is just, I need to know what's going on. I can't attend the conference, even that my specialty runs, much less things that are happening outside my specialty. So a piece of it is absolutely trying to keep up on what's going on in medicine. Some of it literally is reference lookups. They need to know the starting dose of a drug. They need to know what it interacts with. They come to us as well. Sometimes they come for much more formal courseware. As opposed to just reading about a conference, they want to take continuing medical education activity. And I'll tell you, a lot of physicians come to us just trying to figure out the healthcare environment, the regulatory environment. You know, 75% or so of physicians are now employed. If you go back 20 years, it was just the reverse in terms of how many were self-employed and not part of a larger organization. So a piece of why they come to us, although it's mostly clinical, is also just trying to figure out for themselves, how do they navigate a complex healthcare system?
And we'll get back to you. You're such a big publisher. You create a lot of this information. We'll get to that in a little while. But Meredith, you know, you're someone who's been in digital marketing and advertising for a long time. You were at Google for a long time. I think you focused on automotive, right?
Yes, I've made quite a few jumps. Yeah.
So, but now you've taken on this big job at Facebook, which spans even more than I think Facebook initially thought it would. So talk about how Facebook sees its opportunity in healthcare communication, since you are sort of the 97,000-pound gorilla of information at this point. You guys have an amazing opportunity.
Yeah, and you know, I gave you a little bit of the background of why I did choose this position and why I made the jump, right? Because I do think that Facebook has a great potential and great opportunity to be able to help with a lot of the health challenges that we do have. You know, a couple examples is just that, you know, to Lynn's point earlier, these conversations are naturally taking place. So just to give you an example, right, there's over 6 million groups within Facebook that are health related, and of that 70 million members.
70 million people
Yep,
looking at health
70
information
million,
on Facebook.
exactly.
Talking
So
health, yep.
exactly, and they all want that one-to-one type of personal touch and storytelling from these brands, right? But a lot of the times they're finding more information within these groups than even their own specialty doctor, because they're finding similar or like people, right? Because of these more rare diseases. I think another interesting fact to throw out is that every day over 100 groups related to cancer are created as well.
Created,
Yes.
new groups.
Yep.
Wow.
So you can see everything from just like the mass reach of it all the way down to like these niches, right? And so we're really trying to figure out ways of developing strategies to help our clients find ways of developing clinical trials, the patient journey, the drug life cycle, and even reaching HCPs in a more effective way too.
But also, it's not just that you've been, as I understand it, you're not just working with advertisers. You actually have had some kind of
Yes.
silo relationships inside Facebook with content and product design. So
That's
talk
right.
a little bit about how you're spanning a little more than the typical ad area at Facebook.
Yeah, well, because we are a brand new vertical, so for those of you who may or may not know, Facebook had a couple false starts of developing the healthcare category from an advertising perspective too. So when I came over, we're about a year and a half in now, 2 years, so still very young. We wanted to really understand what type of grassroots efforts might be taking place across even product and eng. So really cross-functionally and across the different orgs at Facebook, because as you can imagine, there's a real natural marriage between health and Facebook and that reach and connection. Since then, we've now learned that we have teams around like protect and care. And some of you have probably seen the press around suicide prevention. Also, we have safety check, right? I mean, we have now connected more than 1 billion people to let them know that people are safe when a crisis happens. And then there's also a team just who actually work on safety check that's called Social Good. And they do a lot of that stuff, even around organ donor, et cetera. So we're starting to really see this take hold, even outside of an advertising perspective piece. And even, Mark's letter, for example, around community, and him having CZI as a standalone or
Right, I was going to
nonprofit
say,
too.
as someone who wrote a book about him, that your
Yeah.
boss has now said he wants to cure all diseases.
disease,
All
yes.
diseases,
Oh, wow.
whatever
That's
that
right.
means.
That's
It's a
right.
very ambitious thing to say.
Yes.
Now, does that mean that he personally is paying more attention to what's happening inside Facebook relating to health?
No, I think that there's obviously it's a very entrepreneurial spirit within Facebook. Same thing at Google, right? Like you have all of these different passion areas and moonshots and different initiatives that people start to kind of go after and they want to build. And so I think naturally we're starting to see that's more of a focus area, but CZI is very much, it's run on its own
That's
separate
the
entity.
Chan Zuckerberg initiative for
Yeah,
anyone.
oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
so Lynn, I want to jump back to you for a second because, here I am, I did write a book about Facebook and I think a lot about this idea of the empowerment of the individual and what makes the world different now than before. To me, that is, I still would say, the single biggest thing that's different in the world now than 10 years ago is that we are in a world of empowered individuals through this digital media that you all represent. And so I know you look at it similarly. So talk a little bit from your standpoint what that means in healthcare and what the opportunity is as a result of the fact, we've heard all day about the healthcare industry essentially, but we have sort of left the individuals out of it. So bring
And
it
we've
back.
kind of left the communications business out of it, which, we had Gray talk about communication as being the cure. And what we mean by that is let's align consumer needs and insights with professional guidance, quite frankly, so that we could achieve a higher outcome out there. So there's an enormous number of people who are interested now in health. I mean, and demonstrated by WebMD, the beginning of Dr. Google. Tons of people go to the web for information. Now, what struck me with the work we've been doing with Facebook and the conversations we've had is you have this enormous growth of communities that are developing, and they're talking to one another, and they're curious, and they're sharing more than just a diagnosis and more than just fact-finding. Again, going back to our research, the definition of health is changing with the younger generation. It includes mental health, spiritual health. It includes mindfulness. When you talk to a pharmaceutical company about the definition of health, they kind of say, "Oh my God, I don't have a drug for that." But maybe some of the therapeutics are actually online in Facebook. So you have people comparing notes, people sharing, and I think the opportunity in some of these newer communities would be to use the same algorithms like we heard this morning that we use in advertising to identify some of the educational needs that might be necessary and feed into that conversation, expert conversation that would actually help that community amplify and perhaps increase their medical acuity online. And that, I think, can be done. Our industry has been very shy about getting involved in social media for all the reasons that we've heard in the past. But we're thinking at Gray, it's really more of an educational and an opportunity to really bring communities to a higher level. And then the last thing I'd say is there's just a lot of smart health consumers out there that are online. And if we could vet them more as health stars and people who really should be the more influential one in the community, again, we'd go beyond complaining and sharing notes that may not be as accurate as possible to something that would be far greater. So, that's, to me, the vision for this very important industry. Needs to be addressed or, it needs to be labeled as such that they are in the healthcare business.
So,
Yeah, and we're really looking at it from like a connection, a support, and a connectivity mindset, right? Like those I would say are the three areas that the consumer wants to be communicated to, right? Again, to that one-to-one, like personal storytelling, and even consumption is really starting to shift. So you look at 20% of all mobile time is spent on Facebook and Instagram. And in video consumption, right? On Facebook alone, it's 100 million hours per day. So it's about understanding how they want to be communicated to, how they want to consume the information.
Have you got any statistics on what percentage of that might have some health-related element to it?
No, I don't have those
Because
exact
there's this
cuts,
amazing,
but
I'm sure you know this.
it
there's
is
a
one of the most talked topics,
There's
right?
a statistic I saw that 1 in 20 searches
Yeah,
on Google is
Google
related to
is
health.
health.
Maybe you told me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is a very big factor in what consumers are doing on the internet.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes,
And
and if
Google
you-
has, go ahead.
Yes,
sorry.
no, but I mean, even if you look, right, there's probably 110 plus million wearables in the market right now.
Right.
And people want to be, exactly, like in this room. And
many have
people
them,
want to
huh?
be able to talk about their physical activity, their preventative health, and just sharing even that type of information too, within our platforms.
Well, and maybe, Steve, one of the things that I guess both of you have sort of mentioned or referred to, but it's worth just mentioning in more detail, there really has been a change in the way the pharmaceutical industry is able to look at online media. They sort of had their hands cuffed for a long time where they could do almost literally no communication online because of FDA regulations. Can you talk a little bit about how that's changed? Because I know that's a big part of your customer base.
Sure, and when you look at vetted content that's been created by experts, pharma's been able to advertise on that content and provide content for years. They've still been trying to work out how they can place content and participate in a place where there's user-generated content, and I think some good work's been done in that area. But, and one of the interesting questions, hopefully it gets at also what you're trying to get at, is I'm really fascinated by the balance of kind of user-generated content and communities and content that may have been written by experts and been vetted. And I don't think it's one or the other. But if you have cancer, I think you want to go online and talk to people who've had a similar experience. You might also want to read something by someone who's an absolute expert in the field and who's been acknowledged to be such and whose content has really been vetted and you're sure it's been updated. And it's really interesting to look at the balance of those things because I think what we're trying to provide, at least at WebMD, is a balance of those two things. If you want to talk to someone in a community, absolutely, and let those conversations go where they may. But at times, you'd also like an evidence-based, fact-based conversation if you're trying to make a difficult decision. And it doesn't just go for consumers. When you look at our communities on Medscape, our professional site, we have institutions like Baylor and Columbia who participate in those discussions because doctors will occasionally go down some pretty odd paths in discussing patients and be pretty far off what at least the research evidence says is the correct way to treat that patient. So that balance of, I really want to know what similar people have undergone, and I also want to know at least what the scientific facts are from an expert, is, I think, an interesting balance. But pharma has been able to exist in an area in which at least the content's vetted for a long time, and they've been partners of ours for the 20 years the company's operated.
Meredith, I mean, I know that you guys have dealt with a lot of changes there. Maybe quickly you could just describe what has happened at Facebook.
Yeah, I mean, I think the policy and regulatory constraints are very real, but it's not impossible to overcome. And so I think before our team, that's what really was the hesitation of being able to truly just launch support for these clients. But we've actually come a long way in a short period of time. As I said, we're about 1.5 years old. And we just launched a scrolling ISI overlay unit for our video ads, for example.
ISI means what?
So it's basically the entire, like, you could die, right? Everything that they include within
The warnings.
Yeah,
Oh,
all
the warnings. Oh, I
right?
see.
Like
Yeah.
your eye
Oh,
might
that's
fall out. Yeah.
With the other voice,
exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. Half the TV spot is usually the ISI. Right. It's the information around, like, the
You
warning
could die.
signs.
Yeah, that's sort of the summary version.
Yeah, exactly. And so that wasn't necessarily, we weren't able to do that before, and now we can. So we've been working very closely with product. Before, there was a constraint around, you couldn't have ask your doctor in your messaging. And so a lot of these policies were set at the global level, and we were able to go in and explain and have lawyers walk them through, and then also make the clients and our pharma marketers more comfortable with understanding, like, here's all the checks and balances, and we will put processes in place to ensure that our products aren't changing and therefore putting you in a bad spot from an FDA regulatory.
Did the FDA itself, though, really change the way, what they allowed you to do because of
No,
your-
but they're understanding digital more and more, right?
Yeah.
And so we're kind of bringing ourselves into the fold of, for example, one of our clients has about 13 different checkpoints in order to get a creative piece live, right? So we now go with them through that 13-point process, and we now bake in that
What a
it's going
pain
to be
in
a
the neck.
4 to 6 week lead time. But where there's a will, there's a way, and we're finding ways. Which
Okay,
is great.
so I want to just ask you about a slightly different thing, because, Facebook, I'm just curious what the breakdown is likely to be going forward on Facebook between kind of user-generated media and professional-generated media. I mean, I don't know, this is kind of an aggressive question, but Facebook's reported to be talking to content producers about short-form video. This is pure entertainment stuff. But could you envision a period down the road where Facebook might actually produce content about health? Or are you already doing that? Or are you going to leave it to the users and the advertisers basically to do that? Because
Yeah,
that's
I
sort of
mean,
the
everything that
breakdown
I've
now.
heard from our fearless leaders, we're not necessarily going to, create our own branded content. We will use other talent to bring that type of content onto the platform. And we have Facebook Live, right? That's all user generated for the most part.
Which you guys use.
We do.
Yeah.
Yeah, you talk about how you use Facebook Live.
Yeah, we've, over the last 6 months or more, have really been pretty active in putting our physicians into Facebook Live and having some really lively conversations, whether it's about issues in pediatrics, whether it's how patients can lose weight, whether it's in specific areas like cancer. So we think Facebook Live is a great way to communicate with our audience. And I will say, we've, over the last several years, have realized not everyone is going to come to WebMD who's looking for healthcare content. So whether it's on Facebook, whether it's on Instagram, whether it's on Pinterest, I think you have to be in all those places. I think you need to find your audience, not just on your site and in your app, but wherever they're looking for healthcare information. So yeah, Facebook Live has been a really effective way for us to reach our audience off of our site.
And while we're talking about new places you're putting your content, let's just talk quickly about Alexa and Google Home, because I think it's fascinating that you can now say, Alexa,
Right.
ask WebMD what arthritis is, or what, you could do that, or you could do a lot more detailed things than that, right?
Yeah, look, we think, again, just like we said, to be on Facebook Live and some of these other places, that these alternate interfaces are really important. If someone's sitting around their house and has a question about the flu or when their kids need to be vaccinated, why should they get up and go to a computer? Why can't they just speak that and get an answer? And we know they want content from us. They know it's vetted. They know it's reviewed by physicians. They know it's updated continually. So it's been pretty exciting. It's early in that, so if you've got Google Home or Amazon Echo, please use it, ask us questions. We're sort of tracking to try to understand, are we fulfilling kind of that information need as well as we can? But yeah, I'm very excited. And Facebook Messenger as well is another place where you can really have some interactions.
Have your bot.
Facebook Messenger, yeah, really powerful.
Yeah, so you'll see WebMD and Medscape, our professional service, wherever people are trying to get information.
Could you or have you talked about building a bot on Facebook Messenger? Is that a possibility?
That is absolutely something that you will see.
You will see.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I think you'll see more and more of that, right? That's just a natural extension of most likely the evolution and the innovation that will take place across our platform anyway.
It's interesting because actually the Facebook Messenger really in a way becomes like a replacement for Google in a certain sense in a lot of applications, right? Because if you might formerly have been one of the 1 in 20 searches on Google for information about whatever malady you had, you'll be able to just text it in on Facebook Messenger and get it from WebMD or from some other partner.
Exactly. And that's where a commercial player can play. We have a dental company that's looking into having a full, bot there to kind of answer all of the kind of dental questions you need and needs. I just want to, go ahead.
Go ahead. No.
I was just going to say that the convergence, well, first of all, the convergence, I think, might end up being closer to Amazon. Because what we haven't really done is connected content, community, and again, this may be with the players in the room, and commerce. So if you're someone dealing with chronic disease, let's say a spouse gets Parkinson's, we know as clinicians, I used to be a nurse, what the 5-year plan is going to look like. We know how that disease progresses. We know what people might need to buy. And so to make it that much more convenient, and also I might add that is probably the biggest trend in healthcare right now, that customer service is coming to healthcare. Wake up and smell the coffee. That's what everybody wants. They want it now. They want it. That could be the ultimate solution, and that's where many people might play. But certainly Amazon is sitting there with more people buying Depends on Amazon than anywhere else in the world.
Wait, so how would Amazon's role shift in the world you're envisioning there then?
I think, well, they have not really gone whole hog into healthcare, but I think that think about a platform where someone comes to shop for Depends. There could be some opportunity to watch a video and hear more about what their condition is. You might even be able to upsell them if it looks like they have a more serious problem to a telemedicine capability, and next thing you know, they could buy the prescription they need. I mean, that's not where we are right now, but that's ultimately what's going to be built, because consumers really, particularly the millennial group, they want it and they want it now. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, but it reminds me of an example because, we were talking about groups and kind of like user behavior shifting as well. And we've started to see that even new expectant moms, right, all the way through the first year of birth and life, they increase their usage of Facebook by roughly 350%. So imagine what a messenger bot could do after the fact, right? Like it's their first time going to see their doctor. They didn't get a chance to ask all of those questions. They're going in. I mean, no one remembers every question that they want to be able to ask at that point, and this is all new to them, right? So you can start to see the extension or the arc that people will start to take place all the way from prevention to, all the way to end of life, right? And caregivers and supporters who have to go and now mourn and get their life back together, right? So.
And in the case of the moms, too, you can't underestimate the power of the community.
Yeah.
Because the peer influence is so critical in there. So that's where Facebook, I mean, I can't even remember how many moms groups you have, but the 300% is just crazy.
Yeah. Yep.
And again, marrying that all to the ability to purchase and the ability to share better information just makes it that much more exciting.
Just a related question, Lynn, or maybe either of you want to comment. I mean, I know you were in the room when Jonathan mentioned the thing that WeChat is doing with the glucometer. Right?
Yeah, that was amazing.
WeChat in China is now selling a glucometer that you can attach to your Android or probably iPhone, anything, and use it with WeChat to then share your glucose measurements if you're a diabetic or whatever with your close friends automatically. I mean, do you think that's going to happen globally? I mean, it is interesting that WeChat is ahead of anybody with things like that partly because of their overwhelming dominance in China.
Well, yeah, and everything
Yeah.
is done in WeChat.
Right, anything to be done on
Anything
WeChat.
WeChat.
But I think, though, that's about the trust in the community. And I think some of these smaller, some of these communities become, might be comfortable, sharing. Certainly, we've done a lot of work with, in smoking cessation, and the number one reason why people stay with smoking cessation is, their peers that continue to reinforce that. So it's not far-fetched. I mean, again, that would be completely community-based. I wouldn't see a commercial player suggesting that. But if it bubbled up from the community that they wanted to share, I mean, so many triathletes and all these people share that kind of data. So it's not that out of the realm of possibility that I would see people sharing their hemoglobin A1Cs or whatever the.
And I want to hear from
It
you
is.
all, but just for the two media companies here, it is interesting how much today the issue of motivation came up, and how many times we heard that people don't do what they know they should do, and that there are new systems arising, and we've heard several examples of them on stage, to incent people or gamify or whatever, get them to start doing the things they know they should do, but they don't want to do just because it's the right thing, but they need some push, which you could both be providing, right? Is that something you're thinking about?
Well, something we do. So there are about 70 million employees who are covered by our WebMD Health Services division, and that whole division is about encouraging wellness and improving the health of those employees. So, and a lot of that is creating incentives, creating teams to work on things. So
You do that now.
we do it now, and completely agree that we don't know everything about how to motivate people, and there's not one way to do that, but certainly community is a really important way to get people who are willing to share information and encourage each other to improve their health. But yeah, we do that today, and it's an important part of our business.
Did you want to say that?
I mean, we haven't really dived into that just yet. I could see us being able to almost help with that, right? But I mean, that goes back even to the question of the panel that you had probably two before us on just around like the whole healthcare and insurance dilemma too, and all of the preventative care, right? And how do you incentivize the right behaviors? But you'd probably be able to eventually track that because of these platforms
Messenger
and
could
because
be
of
a
wearables.
huge tool for
Exactly, right? Like similar to driving insurance, right?
Yep.
The longer that you have without an accident, like your deductible comes down or your costs come down, right? So
I mean, think of the combination
be-
of Proteus data on Facebook in a community.
yeah, and they are all willing to share.
But
Talk
my
about-
pill,
Yeah.
I took it, right, yeah.
But that's why
mean,
with clinical
yeah.
trials, like, what the pharma brands would be able to at least have that type of conversation and find those people, similarities, et
We
cetera.
might need to have kind of an AA format or something,
Yeah.
for people to admit. I mean, it is completely insane in
magnitude.
in the magnitude of the problem of how many
problem
people
of what?
of noncompliance.
Non-compliance with
I mean,
what? Yeah.
people might take a diabetic product once. How can we even talk about the fact that they're under treatment? So, again, that's the kind of vision that we kind of talk about. Like, what is the power of getting into that community and getting that kind of positive reinforcement? We know, the behavioral scientists know what the motivations and barriers are in smoking cessation, for example. And if you talk to someone about emphysema when they're interested in saving money, you're going to fail. We haven't really dug in, and we know, I mean, I'm sure if we actually dug into the community discussions in a way, you'd start to pick out some really interesting insights
Yeah.
about people who are more engaged in their health than not.
Yeah, or even predictive
Yeah.
modeling, right? And then, I also oversee grocery and drug as well. So how does this all connect to the back of the store?
Food
right?
and medicine, food
Yeah.
is medicine.
My usual suspects here: politics, grocery and drug, and then health. And they just give me all the hairy ones.
I like
They're
the
"Here you go.
grocery, yeah.
Take these
So,
three.
who has a
Oh, I'm
comment?
ready
or
to
question?
sign up
Okay,
for
good.
Habit
Yeah,
after
good.
seeing
Somebody
that.
who hasn't asked a question before.
Hi, I'm Alex. I cover cannabis and social media. So
Yeah.
No, but it's okay. You're close enough to us, but I don't know about the rest of them. Yeah, that's true.
Is it on?
Can we get the other one? Yeah, just switch, and make that one
Sounds
work in the
interesting.
meantime. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Alex. I cover cannabis and hemp and social media. So
Hi is right.
fair warning for Meredith. This question comes from a Facebook user who created a page named Hemp Vermont. And I promise everyone in this room that the goal of this question is not to focus on his specific case and his specific page, but rather to open up a good discussion. So His question is, why doesn't Facebook's algorithm make the distinction between hemp, which is non-psychoactive cannabis, and cannabis with psychoactive THC? The fact that his paid promotion of his hemp page was rejected so fast, quote unquote, makes him think that a human at Facebook never saw it. By fast, he meant under a minute. So the rejection notice said something like, you can't promote illegal activity. And so again, the question is, why doesn't Facebook's algorithm make the distinction between hemp, which is non-psychoactive cannabis, and cannabis with psychoactive THC?
That's a very
Okay.
niche type
Yeah.
question, but we'll let Meredith spend a very short time answering it and not force her to answer it in
Yeah.
great detail.
I mean, I'm happy to help you offline too, but obviously our community standards are extremely high. And so there's obviously algorithmic things at play to make sure that violent content, child abuse, anything like that that's inappropriate is shown. And so I would have to dig more, but there's obviously ways of appealing that and going through the systems to make sure that we can differentiate that. I don't know the specific case, but I'm assuming that's why.
Yeah, if it's really
because we're
rope
so
you're selling
strict.
or whatever,
Yeah.
eventually
Yeah,
you're going to be able to sell it
You'll
on
be-
Facebook.
You'll be allowed,
You know.
but yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, over here. Okay, let's go to you. Can we get a mic over here? Okay, it's coming. The intrepid Mike Andler, thank you so much.
Thank you. Hi, good afternoon. In regards to, I just went to an IBM conference in regards to Chatbox. This question is for Facebook. Will Facebook allow, behavioral analytics and sentiment analysis for better predictive, to enhance predicting customer or patient outcomes? Will we be allowed to enable that in Facebook? As far as their algorithms are concerned, will we be able to customize it, and so we can get better sentiment analysis, better behavioral
You mean
analytics for
as an
patients?
advertiser, or who are you?
Both, from all perspectives, from a developer's perspective, from an advertiser's perspective, and from a physician's perspective. This
I mean,
will
I'll have to confirm, because we don't target based on symptom or disease. So I'd have to understand better about exactly what targeting you'd want to be able to utilize too. But
So, for example, let's say we have, from a physician's perspective, if Facebook if Facebook will be allowed, if developers will be allowed to customize sentiment analysis and patient behavioral analytics, this will really help the physicians as far as the diagnosis and to enhance patients' recovery. I just went to a recent IBM conference, and if we can implement, from a developer's perspective, if we can liaise with the physicians, we can be able to implement and have faster outcomes and to reduce any risks that are involved.
okay, yeah. I mean, let's talk offline for
This is the problem
sure.
with being
So
from Facebook,
yeah.
is that you get some pretty heavy questions because your company is so central to the debate in modern society. And obviously, that's a developer question
Yeah.
in a way more.
Yeah.
But it's a very good question, but she's the ad salesperson, so she may not be able to answer that.
yeah, for sure. Happy to help.
Who else has one quick last additional one? Okay, Gary. Identify yourself again.
Gary Kay with Tech 50 Plus. First, a quick shout out to Facebook. I recently went through a very bizarre journey getting a new kidney, and I went to WebMD and found lots and lots of information, but it wasn't until somebody introduced me to one of the interest groups on Facebook that I found the experiential narrative that was really important in knowing what was coming and what things were going to be like. And I can't really thank you enough because there was no other place where that exists.
That's great. I'm happy to hear that. It's amazing. There's
My one question, our readers are very interested in things like telehealth, connected homes, connected healthcare, and one of the things that I'm not seeing a lot of out there are resources for these kind of ecosystems. Do you guys have any thoughts on how to filter information on, where you're going to get your health care if you're a snowbird, and what devices are going to work for caregivers and so forth?
Yeah. I personally don't know of any of that work that's being done right now on that. I know that we are trying to make it much easier to be able to find certain groups and people that are more similar, but I don't have a specific kind of direction for you on that.
That might be something that Google should also
Yeah.
comment on. I mean, I think that two things. Well, what fascinates me about the Google data that I've seen is they have the ability to understand what people are searching when at what time. For example, 4 a.m. in the morning is when young mothers search for ear infection or earache. And, so they know what exactly people need. And I think they're more likely to be in the position to help various groups with some of the answers that you're talking about, finding what you need in terms of search and more targeted. One thing I wanted to say about Alexa, by the way, which is kind of a downer, but I just find it completely fascinating. I'm on the JED Foundation board, which is an organization to improve the emotional health of college students and prevent suicide. And what we've heard is that more people ask Alexa how to kill themselves now. And so we have this responsibility, whether it's Google or Alexa or what have you, that people are asking Alexa questions, they have more data. There's the ability to, at some point, start to really analyze the tone of the voice, the type of words that are used. And it's fascinating from the JED perspective that actually the media companies know more about this right now than we do.
Well,
and what we do with that is the
Goes to
question.
show Amazon may want to do everything, but they got some responsibility
Yeah.
once they start doing it, which Facebook has found out the hard way.
Right.
I mean, I don't know whether Meredith would be willing to talk about it. You don't have to, but I've heard that there are many, many hundreds of people at Facebook just devoted to detecting suicide. Just that one thing. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people. And that's necessary when you have 2 billion people on a platform.
Yeah, I don't know if I don't know what the number is, but we do have a team called Protect and Care. And that's why we have been doing very specific initiatives around suicide prevention, right?
Yeah.
Being able to integrate Facebook Live, Messenger, both for families and friends, and then also being able to understand what those signals are.
There's so
And
many more
again,
things.
this goes back to this point that we are the media this is where consumers are.
Yep.
This is where they're talking about it. And there's more information. Again, I worked in this suicide prevention for 14 years. It's amazing that now it's really in the hands of not in the hands of the media company, but there's just so much more information there that's being shared that we're going to have to, we as a country are going to have to figure out how to enlist more help to those people, and many people are working on this. I didn't mean to say that Amazon was even involved in Alexa. Just the point is
But
that
they
home
are.
device that's sitting in the home is going to become smarter and smarter,
Yeah.
and be able to hopefully help.
No, it's great. It's very
yeah.
interesting. And you're sort of setting Dean up, which is, we got to go to that. But did you have any last thoughts? Because I just didn't want to
No,
not give you a chance for any final thoughts.
Well, look, the one thing I would add is I think that we kind of all have a responsibility to look at those points where we do interact with consumers and can take an action. So to your point, whether it is these advanced technologies that will start to interpret things like sentiment, I think we all have to come together and say we're interacting with people at a vulnerable time. There's information, and particularly if we have their permission to do these things, which I think we have to think hard about because people may be sharing information they absolutely don't want us to act on. I think you will see much more sophisticated systems. And, as at WebMD, we're trying to participate in getting all the data we can from people to help them and, try to prevent some of the things you're